The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning in April 2087. It hung silently above the planet, its dark metal surface reflecting sunlight as it dwarfed the International Space Station nearby. Panic spread across the world for 3 days until the ship sent its first message. "We are the Galactic Hegemony. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." 6 weeks later, Ambassador Joe Thax of the Hegemony stepped onto Earth soil in Geneva, Switzerland. He stood 7 feet tall with bluish-gray skin and 4 arms. 2 Hegemony guards flanked him, each carrying weapons that made Earth's military leaders nervous. Dr. Elizabeth Doyle led the human delegation. She was 52 years old with silver-streaked brown hair and steady hands that hadn't shaken once since the alien arrival. As Earth's foremost linguist and chief diplomat, she had spent every waking hour preparing for this meeting. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Joe Thax," she said, offering a slight bow instead of a handshake. The Hegemony briefings had mentioned their distaste for physical contact with unknown species. Joe Thax tilted his elongated head. "Your world is smaller than I expected, yet you have achieved much for a Class 3 civilization." Elizabeth maintained her diplomatic smile, despite the condescending tone. "We look forward to learning from the Hegemony's greater experience." The first meetings took place in the renovated United Nations building. Representatives from every Earth nation attended, watching as Joe Thax explained the Hegemony's vast reach across 12,000 worlds. Maps displayed on advanced holographic projectors showed Earth as a tiny dot on the edge of what the aliens called developed space. Major Alan Reeves sat quietly at the back of the room. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his expression neutral. As Earth's military liaison, he had been chosen for his calm demeanor and analytical mind. He watched the aliens carefully, noting how they studied the human delegates. During the 3rd day of talks, the Hegemony requested permission to assess Earth's military capabilities. "A standard procedure," Joe Thax explained. "All new contact species are evaluated for protection requirements and threat assessment." The world leaders debated for hours before agreeing to limited demonstrations. For the next 2 weeks, the Hegemony observers toured military bases, watched naval exercises, and studied Air Force maneuvers. General Craig Thar, the Hegemony's military advisor, seemed unimpressed. "Your forces are adequate for planetary defense," he told Major Reeves while observing a tank exercise in Germany. "Though primitive by Hegemony standards, we manage with what we have," Reeves replied evenly. Krekthar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "What puzzles me is the lack of elite forces. Where are your superior warriors, your special combat units?" Reeves gestured to the regular soldiers. "What you see is what you get, General. We're a civilian-focused society." The alien made a clicking sound that his translator didn't convert. Later, Reeves learned it indicated disbelief. After a month of assessment, the Hegemony delivered their evaluation to the United Nations Security Council. Their report classified Earth as a Class 3 species, technologically advanced enough for space travel, but militarily insignificant on a galactic scale. "You pose no threat to galactic stability," Joe Thax announced, "and the Hegemony offers protection from those who might exploit developing worlds such as yours." That evening, Elizabeth Doyle met with President Richard Boyd and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in a secure underground facility beneath Washington, D.C. "They've underestimated us," General Catherine Hill said, reviewing the Hegemony's assessment. President Boyd nodded. "Good. Let's keep it that way." Major Reeves spoke up from his corner. "They specifically looked for elite military units. They were confused by their absence." "Then our strategy is working," Elizabeth replied. "They don't understand that on Earth, the most dangerous people often look the most ordinary." Across the country that same night, Greg Miller taught his evening self-defense class in Chicago. Susan Baker performed surgery in a Seattle hospital. Frank Nelson graded history papers in his living room in rural Oregon. None of their neighbors, friends, or colleagues knew these ordinary Americans were part of Program Sentinel, the most elite fighting force Earth had ever produced. And for now, that's exactly how Earth wanted to keep it. 5 years passed since first contact with the galactic hegemony. The initial fear and excitement had settled into a cautious partnership. Earth ships now traveled to nearby stars, and alien technology improved human lives. But the relationship remained unequal. On a warm June day in 2092, Ambassador Joseph Martinez led the Earth delegation into the massive treaty hall on the hegemony capital world of Storylia. The room stretched the length of a football field, with towering crystal walls that changed color with the speaker's emotions. Joseph straightened his tie and tried to look confident. "The terms are fair," said Jothax, now promoted to High Commissioner. "Earth will gain protection, trade rights, and access to 23 star systems for colonization." Joseph reviewed the document on his tablet. "And the military restrictions." General Krekthar stepped forward. His armor clinked as he moved. "Basic precautions. Earth must report all military developments and accept limits on weapon production. Standard terms for new protectorates." The Earth delegation whispered among themselves. President William Carter had given clear instructions: accept the treaty but protect Earth's secrets. Joseph nodded slowly. "We accept these terms, with the amendments we discussed regarding civilian autonomy." The signing ceremony took 4 hours. When it finished, Earth officially became a protectorate of the hegemony. Champagne flowed at the reception afterward, but Joseph drank little. He knew what this treaty really meant. Earth would play weak while building strength. Back on Earth, Frank Nelson loaded bags into his car outside his home in Oregon. His neighbor waved from across the street. "Going somewhere nice, Frank?" the neighbor called. Frank smiled. "Teacher conference in Portland. Back next week." This was a lie. In reality, Frank headed to a secret training facility in the Cascade Mountains. With Earth now part of the hegemony, Program Sentinel needed to adapt. Frank had been teaching high school history for 6 years, building his cover identity. His students loved his classes and never suspected their kind teacher could kill in 30 different ways. At the mountain facility, Frank met 50 other operatives. Like him, they lived ordinary lives as teachers, doctors, office workers, and parents. General Catherine Hill addressed them from a raised platform. "The treaty is signed," she announced. "The hegemony believes they have contained us, but they don't understand humans yet." She activated a screen showing hegemony warships. "Their technology is 200 years ahead of our public military, but Program Sentinel will close that gap." For 2 weeks, Frank and the others trained with stolen alien technology, learning how to defeat hegemony weapons and armor. Their bodies, already enhanced with subtle genetic modifications, adapted quickly. Each night, Frank studied alien languages and customs until he fell asleep. Meanwhile, at Hegemony Intelligence Headquarters, Officer Trell Nix reviewed reports from Earth. Something bothered him about the humans. Their military seemed too simple, too straightforward. In his 800 years of service, he had never encountered a species without elite fighting forces. "Run the comparison again," he told his assistant. "Sir, this is the 5th analysis." The assistant protested. "The results are clear. Humans have standard military units only. No genetic warriors, no combat elites." Frelnix's tentacles twitched with annoyance. "That's impossible. All species develop specialized fighters." On a hegemony cruiser orbiting Mars, General Krekthar met with his senior staff. "The treaty is proceeding as planned. Human military development will remain under our control." "And their colonies?" asked a junior officer. "Limited to nearby systems. Nothing that threatens hegemony interests." Krekthar displayed a map of human settlement zones. "They are contained." Back on Earth, Frank Nelson returned to his classroom after training. His students never noticed the small scar behind his ear, the new implant that connected him to Program Sentinel's communication network. They saw only their history teacher, passionate about ancient civilizations and always willing to help after class. In Washington, D.C., President Carter met secretly with General Hill. "How many operatives are ready?" he asked. 6,000 active, 20,000 in reserve," she replied. "All living civilian lives, all prepared to fight. And the hegemony suspects nothing." General Hill smiled. "They're looking for armies, Mr. President. They don't understand that on Earth, the most dangerous weapon has always been the ordinary person pushed too far." As night fell across the planet, thousands of Earth's deadliest defenders tucked children into bed, paid bills, walked dogs, and blended perfectly into civilian life. The hegemony's biggest mistake was already in motion. They had classified humans as predictable. 20 years after Earth joined the hegemony, human colonies spread across 7 star systems. The relationship seemed peaceful on the surface, but beneath that calm, tensions grew. Frank Nelson now had gray at his temples. At 53, he still taught history at the same high school in Oregon. His students this year were particularly bright, especially the seniors preparing for graduation. No one suspected that their teacher maintained a rigorous combat training schedule before dawn each morning. On a Tuesday afternoon, Frank was explaining the Roman Empire when his watch vibrated with a specific pattern. He paused mid-sentence, then quickly recovered. "Please read Chapter 12 for tomorrow," he told his class calmly. "We'll continue this discussion then." After the students left, Frank checked the encrypted message on his tablet. Reports showed attacks on 3 human colonies by a group called the Purity Collective. This radical faction believed in the genetic superiority of pure species and considered humans an abomination. The colony on Proxima Centauri I had been hit hardest. Over 800 civilians killed. Frank's jaw tightened as he read about families murdered in their homes. That evening, news broadcasts across Earth reported the attacks. People gathered in living rooms and public spaces to watch the hegemony's response. High Commissioner Joe Thax appeared on screens worldwide. "The Galactic Hegemony condemns these terrorist actions," he announced. "We have dispatched peacekeeping forces to affected areas." But the peacekeeping forces consisted of only 2 cruisers. For many humans, this response seemed weak. President Olivia Garcia addressed the nation an hour later, her face grave. "While we appreciate the hegemony's concern, Earth will take additional measures to protect our colonies." In Washington, D.C., an emergency meeting convened in a room 100 feet below the White House. General Christopher Lee, now head of Earth's Defense Forces, faced the Security Council. "The Hegemony Council voted against military action," he explained. "They want to negotiate with the collective." President Garcia slammed her hand on the table. "While they talk, our people die." An older woman sat quietly at the end of the table. Admiral Susan Baker, once a surgeon, now Earth's highest-ranking military officer, studied the holographic display of the attacked colonies. "It's time for Protocol Omega," she said simply. The room fell silent. Protocol Omega meant activating the embedded operatives of Program Sentinel. For 20 years, these enhanced soldiers had lived among ordinary citizens, never revealing their true capabilities. "The hegemony will notice," someone warned. Admiral Baker nodded. "Yes, they will. But they've left us no choice." President Garcia took a deep breath. "Activate Protocol Omega." Across Earth and its colonies, thousands of ordinary people received coded messages. A baker in Paris locked her shop early. A construction worker in Sydney called in sick. A nurse in Chicago asked a colleague to cover her shifts due to a family emergency. Frank Nelson received his message while grading papers at his dining room table. He immediately began preparations, telling neighbors he needed to care for a sick relative. Within hours, his emergency bag was packed. Before leaving home, Frank wrote detailed lesson plans for the substitute teacher and personal notes to each of his senior students. He looked around his house one last time, unsure when or if he would return. On the hegemony capital world, Trilonix, now chief intelligence officer, noticed something strange in the data. Thousands of humans had suddenly changed their routine behaviors. Travel patterns showed unusual movement from Earth to colony worlds. Analyze these anomalies, he ordered his team. Something is happening with the humans. On Proxima Centauri Ia, a group of Purity Collective fighters swept through the ruins of the human settlement. Their leader, a fanatic named Vraxure, kicked aside debris from destroyed homes. Weak creatures, he growled to his soldiers. They die so easily. One of his guards pointed to the horizon. Sir, sensors detect approaching vessels. Vraxure laughed. The hegemony ships are days away. Who would dare challenge us? Unknown to him, those approaching vessels carried former teachers, doctors, engineers, and other civilians, all members of Program Sentinel. Among them sat Frank Nelson, his eyes cold and focused as he prepared for battle. The history teacher was gone. The soldier had emerged. For the first time in 20 years, Earth's most dangerous defenders were stepping out of the shadows. The Purity Collective's next target was the Europa Research Station. Built on Jupiter's ice-covered moon, the station housed 300 scientists and support staff. Most were human, but 26 other species also worked there under hegemony protection. The station had minimal defenses. According to hegemony protocols, major military installations near Earth were unnecessary due to the limited threat assessment of the region. Linda Wallace had worked as an administrative assistant at Europa Station for 7 years. Her colleagues knew her as efficient, friendly, and unremarkable. She organized office birthday parties and kept the research library in perfect order. No one suspected she was one of Earth's most elite soldiers. When alarms sounded across the station, Linda was helping a young scientist file research reports. The station's AI voice announced, "Warning, unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel to secure areas." The scientist grabbed Linda's arm. "What do we do?" Linda's demeanor changed instantly. Her voice became commanding. "Get everyone to the central hub. Seal the doors." Across the station, 5 other civilian contractors received encrypted alerts on their devices. All 6 had been placed at the station years earlier, living quiet lives while watching for threats. Outside, 12 Purity Collective ships surrounded the station. Their commander, Sub-Leader Krastek, studied the station's schematics. "Minimal defenses," he reported to his soldiers. "We will capture their research and eliminate all humans. The hegemony forces are 16 hours away." The attack began with precision strikes against the station's communication array. Then boarding craft attached to the outer hull, cutting through with plasma torches. Inside the central hub, terrified scientists huddled together. The station's security team consisted of only 8 guards with basic weapons. Against collective soldiers, they stood little chance. Linda Wallace entered a supply closet and pressed her palm against a hidden scanner. A panel slid open, revealing combat gear and advanced weapons. 5 other administrative staff did the same at different locations throughout the station. When the first collective soldiers breached the main corridor, they expected easy targets. Instead, they met Linda, now wearing light body armor and wielding dual plasma pistols. Her movements were impossibly fast, her aim perfect. 3 attackers fell before they raised their weapons. In the East Wing, maintenance worker Jeff King dropped his friendly persona. The man who had fixed the station's plumbing for years now moved with lethal grace, disabling soldiers with his bare hands. A collective officer fired at him, but Jeff dodged with reflexes no human should possess. Through their implanted communication devices, the 6 operatives coordinated their defense. They moved civilians to secure areas while systematically eliminating the attackers. On his command ship, Krastek received disturbing reports. "Sir, we've lost contact with boarding teams 3 and 5. "Impossible," he snarled. "Send in the elite squad." The collective's best fighters entered the station, led by a towering warrior named Grather. They brought heavy weapons and moved with trained precision. But as they approached the central hub, Jeff King's voice came through the station speakers. "This is your only warning. Leave now, or none of you will survive." Grathor laughed. Humans cannot defeat us. Linda Wallace waited above them, hidden in the air ducts. She watched through enhanced vision as the elite squad moved below. When they passed beneath her position, she dropped silently, landing behind the last soldier. Within 10 seconds, 3 were unconscious. Grathor turned in shock, firing wildly. Linda moved faster than his targeting system could track. She closed the distance between them and struck with such force that his armor cracked. Outside the station, Krastek watched in disbelief as his elite squad went silent. Then the station's defense turrets, previously thought inactive, powered up and targeted his ships. "Retreat," he ordered. "All forces retreat." As the collective ships fled, Hegemony Intelligence Officer Trell Nix watched through a cloaked observation satellite. What he had just witnessed defied all Hegemony assessments of human capabilities. He sent an urgent message to the Hegemony Council. Humans demonstrate previously unknown combat abilities. Request immediate investigation. 2 days later, when Hegemony forces finally arrived at Europa Station, they found everything in perfect order. Linda Wallace greeted them at the docking bay. Once again, the friendly administrative assistant. "We had a minor security incident," she explained calmly, "but everything's under control now." The Hegemony security team found no evidence of the 6 defenders who had repelled the attack. Only security footage showing impossible feats by ordinary station staff. The mystery of Earth's hidden defenders had begun to unravel. Frank Nelson moved silently through the dark corridors of the collective's base on Barnard Star IV. 3 other operatives followed him, each moving with the same fluid grace. None of them spoke. They communicated through small hand gestures and their neural implants. For 20 years, Frank had taught teenagers about ancient Rome and World War II. Now he led a strike team deep into enemy territory. His mission: find and eliminate Vraxur, the collective's leader. The base was carved into a mountain. Security systems guarded every entrance, but Program Sentinel had spent years gathering intelligence. Frank's team knew about a maintenance tunnel that bypassed the main defenses. On the Hegemony capital world, Supreme Commander Vosh Erek stormed into an emergency council meeting. His face showed rage and confusion. "Explain this," he demanded, throwing reports onto the central table. "Humans with impossible abilities defending Europa Station. Now we hear rumors of strikes against collective bases." Ambassador Patricia Ryan, Earth's representative, kept her expression neutral. "The Hegemony's response to attacks on our colonies was insufficient. We have taken steps to protect our people." "With what forces?" Vosh Erek asked. "Your military capabilities were fully disclosed when Earth joined the Hegemony." Patricia smiled slightly. "We disclosed our military units, yes." Trellnix, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "I believe Earth has maintained a secret program. Enhanced soldiers living as civilians until needed." The council chamber erupted in angry shouts. Such deception violated the spirit of the treaty. Some council members demanded immediate sanctions against Earth. Back at the collective base, Frank's team reached the central security hub. 2 guards stood watch. Frank nodded to Carol Bennett, who had been a kindergarten teacher on Earth just 2 weeks ago. Carol removed a small device from her pocket and slid it across the floor. It released an odorless gas that knocked the guards unconscious in seconds. The team accessed the security system. The base schematics appeared on their tablets, showing Vraxur's location in the command center 2 levels below. 4 minutes until the patrol returns," whispered Steve Rogers, formerly a postal worker from Nebraska. Frank nodded. "Let's move." They descended through maintenance shafts, avoiding cameras and motion sensors. When they reached the lower level, Frank used a device to create a power fluctuation. As emergency systems activated, they slipped into the command center undetected. Vraxur stood at a large display, planning his next attack. 6 bodyguards surrounded him. The collective leader was tall and heavily muscled, with natural armor plates covering his body. "Now," Frank said through the neural link. Each team member threw small discs that attached to the bodyguard's armor. Electric pulses rendered them unconscious. Before Vraxur could react, Frank stood before him, weapon raised. "Who are you?" Vraxur demanded. "No human moves like that." "I'm a history teacher," Frank replied as he fired. On the hegemony capital, the council meeting continued for hours. Evidence of unusual human activities mounted. Reports came in of collective commanders found dead in supposedly secure locations. Supply depots destroyed. Communication networks disrupted. "This cannot continue," Vosh Arek shouted. "Either Earth explains these actions or faces consequences." Patricia Ryan remained calm. "I need to consult with my government." When she left the chamber, Trelnix followed her. In a quiet corridor, he approached. "The evidence is clear," he said. "Humans have hidden their true capabilities for decades." Patricia neither confirmed nor denied it. "What would you do, Trelnix, if your world was threatened and your supposed allies offered minimal help?" Before he could answer, her communication device signaled. She checked the message and allowed herself a small smile. "It seems Vraxur has been found dead in his quarters. The collective leadership is in chaos." Trelnix stared at her. "How is this possible?" His base was impenetrable. Patricia met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps your assessments of humans need revision." Across the galaxy, more collective leaders fell. Their movement collapsed from within as strategic targets were hit with surgical precision. And in each case, security footage showed only glimpses of the attackers, ordinary-looking humans moving with extraordinary skill. The hegemony's understanding of Earth was about to change forever. The Hegemony Council chamber was silent as President Olivia Garcia's image appeared on the massive display screen. She wore a simple blue suit, her gray hair pulled back neatly. Despite being a projection from 20 light-years away, her presence commanded attention. "Honorable Council members," she began, "I understand you have questions about recent events." Supreme Commander Vosh Arek stepped forward, his massive form towering over the other aliens. "Questions," he growled. "Earth has violated our treaty by hiding enhanced soldiers among your population." President Garcia nodded calmly. "We disclosed all military units as required. Program Sentinel is not a military unit. It consists of citizens who maintain their civilian lives while receiving specialized training." "This is deception." Vosh Arek slammed his fist down. "The treaty required full disclosure of military capabilities, which we provided," Garcia replied. "The treaty says nothing about individual citizens choosing to develop their natural abilities." The council erupted in angry voices. Ambassador Patricia Ryan stood beside the projection, her face betraying no emotion. Trelnix watched her closely. High Commissioner Jothax raised his hands for silence. "President Garcia, we demand you disband this program Sentinel immediately. All enhanced operatives must be registered with hegemony authorities." The president's expression hardened. "That is not possible. These are free citizens of Earth, not weapons to be controlled." "Then Earth faces sanctions," Vosh Arek declared. "Perhaps military action." Garcia's voice remained steady. "I hope the Council will reconsider. We value our place in the hegemony, but we will not compromise the freedom of our people." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in uproar. Patricia Ryan was ordered to remain on the capital world, while the Council debated Earth's punishment. That evening, Trelnix requested a private meeting with her at the diplomatic gardens. As they walked among exotic plants from 100 worlds, he spoke quietly. "Your people have deceived us for decades." Patricia touched a blue flower gently. "We protected ourselves. The hegemony has never truly understood humans." "Then help me understand," Trelnix said. "Why hide your best fighters among civilians?" "It's not hiding," she explained. "It's who we are. On Earth, our soldiers don't live apart from society. They are part of it. Teachers, doctors, parents. They fight to protect what they love, not because they were bred for battle." Trelnix considered this. In most hegemony species, warriors formed a separate class, often genetically selected or modified for combat. The idea of deadly fighters living normal lives seemed strange to him. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe on Earth's moon colony, Frank Nelson sat across from hegemony diplomat Eliazen. Frank had returned from his mission 3 days earlier and resumed his cover identity. But Eliazen had requested this meeting through official channels. "I know what you are," the diplomat said softly. Frank sipped his coffee. "I'm a history teacher from Oregon. Who can kill a collective warrior with his bare hands?" Eliazen leaned forward. "The Council is preparing sanctions against Earth. Some want military action." Frank's eyes remained calm. "That would be a mistake." "Explain why," Eliazen pressed. "Help me understand your people." Frank considered his words carefully. Most species evolve specialized warriors, bigger, stronger fighters who protect the others. Humans didn't. We evolved as adaptable survivors. Our greatest strength isn't physical power but versatility. He gestured around the cafe. "Any human you see could become a fighter if pushed far enough. Program Sentinel just identifies those with the most potential and gives them training. While they live normal lives," Eliazen said. Frank nodded. "Because that's what we're fighting for. Our normal lives, our communities, our families." Back on the hegemony capital, the Council voted to issue an ultimatum to Earth: disband Program Sentinel and register all enhanced operatives within 30 days, or face severe consequences. Patricia Ryan sent the message to Earth with her own addition. "They still don't understand us. But some are beginning to ask the right questions." Across human space, Program Sentinel operatives continued their missions against remaining collective forces. And on Earth, thousands more lived their everyday lives, teaching classes, delivering mail, raising children, ready if needed, but hoping they wouldn't be. The hegemony battle fleet appeared in Earth's orbit exactly 29 days after the ultimatum. 50 warships positioned themselves in a display of overwhelming force. On Earth, millions watched the sky with worried faces. President Garcia addressed the world from the White House Rose Garden. "We will not surrender our sovereignty or compromise the freedom of our citizens, but we seek peace, not conflict." In orbit, Supreme Commander Vosh Erek prepared to demonstrate the hegemony's power. His flagship, the Dominant Will, could destroy entire cities with its main weapons. He believed Earth would back down when faced with such force. "Final communication from Earth, sir," his officer reported. "They request a meeting." Vosh Erek smiled. "They see reason at last." But the meeting request came with unusual terms. Earth asked for the meeting to take place in a small town in Oregon, Frank Nelson's hometown. Curious despite his annoyance, Vosh Erek agreed to send a delegation. The meeting location was the local high school gymnasium. When Vosh Erek entered with his guards, he found an unexpected scene. Instead of military officers or government officials, the room held ordinary people. Parents, teachers, farmers, store owners, the regular citizens of the town. Frank Nelson stepped forward. "Welcome, Supreme Commander. I'm Frank Nelson. I teach history here." Vosh Erek recognized him from intelligence reports. "You led the mission that killed Vraxur." Frank nodded. "I did. But today I'm just a teacher." Linda Wallace stood beside him. "And I'm just an administrative assistant." One by one, Program Sentinel operatives introduced themselves with their civilian identities: the school principal, the local doctor, the woman who ran the coffee shop. President Garcia arrived, accompanied by Ambassador Ryan and General Christopher Lee. Joe Thax and Trell Nix represented the Hegemony Council. "What is the meaning of this?" Vosh Erek demanded. President Garcia gestured around the room. "You wanted to meet our most elite fighters. Here they are, living among those they protect." Frank spoke up. "For thousands of years, humans fought each other. We learned that soldiers who live apart from society forget what they're fighting for. Our greatest defenders must remember the communities they protect." Vosh Erek looked confused. but your capabilities, the skills you displayed, are exceptional. Yes, Linda said. We train extensively. Some of us have minor genetic enhancements, but what makes us effective is that we fight to protect our homes, our students, our patients, not for glory or conquest. Ambassador Jothax, who had first contacted Earth decades earlier, stepped forward. I believe I understand now. Other species in the hegemony separate their warriors from civilians. Humans integrate them. President Garcia nodded. It's the foundation of our society. We don't hide our soldiers because we're being deceptive. We integrate them because that's what makes them effective. Trelnix had been researching human history. The ancient Spartans of Earth created warriors separate from society. They were fearsome, but eventually failed. The Romans integrated citizen soldiers into their communities and built an empire that lasted centuries. Vosherac remained silent, studying the humans before him. These ordinary-looking people had decimated the collective forces that the hegemony military had failed to defeat. Finally, he spoke to President Garcia. Your approach is unusual, but effective. I must reconsider our assessment of humans. Later that evening, as the hegemony fleet prepared to depart, Vosherac met privately with General Lee and Frank Nelson in the school's empty library. Your program Sentinel may continue, the Supreme Commander said, but we request greater transparency about its capabilities. Frank nodded. We can agree to that. But our operatives must remain integrated in society. I still don't fully understand your ways, Vosherac admitted. But perhaps that is why your strategy worked. The collective didn't understand either. 1 week later, a new treaty was signed. Earth remained part of the hegemony, but with special provisions recognizing the unique nature of human defense forces. Program Sentinel operatives returned to their civilian lives, their secret now known but their purpose unchanged. Frank Nelson went back to teaching history. His students never knew about his missions or the role he played in changing the hegemony's understanding of humanity. As he watched them file into class, he smiled. These ordinary lives were what he had fought to protect, and that made all the difference.